Start the recording. Nicholas, when you're ready, you can take it away.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicholas Tomacho. I'm a professor of architecture and urban studies and planning here at MIT, as well as affiliated faculty with the program in science, technology, and society. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I'm also currently the head of the Department of Architecture, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you. This is a place that is an amazing place where I only recently decided to come or had the opportunity to come myself about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's my privilege this morning to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. And then I will try and do so as quickly as possible, leaving us time for some questions as well, which you're particularly welcome to put in the chat or raise your hand or do anything else that makes sense for you. But if you don't raise your hand or put them in the chat, we might not get to you. So let's see, let me share my screen. All right. Does everyone see something that says virtual open house? Okay. Um, So the very interesting thing about architecture at MIT is that it's a architecture has been here from the very beginning. So we are often thought of as being at the cutting edge here at MIT, but our architecture program is in fact also the oldest professional art degree granting architecture program in the country and graduated America's first architectural graduates in 1868. And these are pictures from the MIT's first building when it was simply a small trade school across the river in Boston. And the story of MIT's expansion and growth into the one of the most important research institutions of our time is the story in the context of architecture of buildings and of a department of architecture that grew from core expertise in professional education to also intersecting that professional education with the most cutting edge research. Another building gives you a sense of MIT's history in this transition is the MIT's Building 20, which stood from 1943 to 1998 in the center of campus. It was originally a temporary building built for MIT's efforts designing radar during the Second World War, but it was famous as a home for experimentation. It gave birth to modern linguistics, AI, a whole set of other innovations for which MIT is responsible. And MIT is responsible, for example, in the context of architecture and design, for the very first CNC machines, the very first CAD systems, the first composite buildings, the first interactive software for architectural design. And you can see this spirit of innovation in the work of our faculty today in self-assembly, circular masonry structures, refugee housing, earthen and ecological architecture, sustainable housing, work on ecological resilience, work on robotic assembly, work on refugee rights, work on the nature and fabric of the American city, on self-assembly, on the kind of apex of modern design discussions. And that's just everything that's a thing, let alone all the books and other articles that come out of the department. This is the department that consistently operates at the very highest level of international discourse in both in architecture and all of its related disciplines in design. And today, I'd say we're doing, not to say that there aren't things that we couldn't improve. I never want to give that impression, but I'd say we're doing well. We are consistently ranked first or second in the world in terms of the quality of architectural research. Not just our faculty, but in fact, our students are regularly featured in international venues like the Venice Architecture Biennale. And if you care about sort of these things, we are highly accredited by the National Association, National Architectural Accrediting Board, with four important criteria of criteria aren't showing up, but I'll tell you what they are. They are PowerPoint slide is being buggy there. Of course, research and innovation, but also the quality of our environment for students, the quality of our work in inequity and belonging, and the quality of support we give to our staff. So those particular citations in our recent accreditation are ones that I'm particularly proud of. We're also, of course, about to go into a new building, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. But all of this success, I think, for the department gives us this it gives us a little bit of pride, but I think most of all, it gives us a sense of enormous responsibility to use the resources and platform of MIT to make the difference we think needs to be made in the world as a community. And we come together as a community in very different ways, but one of the most important ways we come together as a community right now is around the relationship between architecture and climate. Of course, last year was the warmest year on record by a massive margin, and the construction and operations of buildings not only add about 40% of greenhouse gases that cause climate change, but of course, our buildings and communities, as we've recently seen this fall, are at the frontier of the effects of climate change on our environment. This is the map done by my colleague Miho Mazareu of all of the work that goes on in climate in the department from all our faculty. It's kind of at the center of what we do and how we think about the world right now. And it's really at the center of what MIT thinks about right now. This is a excerpt from the inauguration address of our current president, Sally Kornbluth, where she asks us to think about what we could do, not just to really move the needle, but also break the dial. And wouldn't it make you proud? And I guess my question to you as prospective students is the same. Wouldn't it make you proud to be part of a team that went all in on the most important question of our time? So we're already going all in a series of interrelated climate studios that work on research in AI and machine learning, and here virtual reality as well, to think about how, for example, how buildings materials can be reused and remade in a circular economy. We're all in on the relationship between community service and the idea of a climate core that allows students to do their work in the world even while they're students, moving the needle on climate. And of course, we're a big part of the larger climate project at MIT, which I urge you to learn more about. Faculty lead 2 of the 6 MIT-wide pillars of that effort. We're continuing our work on equity for a very important reason. The work on equity and belonging in this department has been going on for a long time, for decades. It's literally woven into our history. In this case, graduating the first Black architect ever licensed in America, who also happens to be MIT's first Black graduate, Robert Robinson Taylor. And that relationship has become a relationship, sustained an important relationship with the school that Taylor went on to found, the School of Architecture at Tuskegee University in Alabama, with whom we have a collaborative relationship of workshops and exhibits. In this case, these are students working with Professor Carrie Norman on an exhibit on the brickwork of Tuskegee that will go up at Yale and Tuskegee and here at MIT in the next several years. And of course, regularly bringing students from Tuskegee, in this case, looking at Robert Taylor's thesis, the very beautiful drawings on the table in front of you at the MIT Museum last spring. The last thing probably going on in the school that it's useful to know about coming in is our a larger commitment, which I began with, to design as part of a conversation at MIT. This school exists, and MIT is the way it is because William Ware, our founder, wrote to the founders of MIT in April 1865 and said, basically, you guys are thinking about a technical school, but you need design to really make it work. Nothing but design brings together technical skills and the problems of design and the education in design and the curiosity it gives you about problem solving are really essential parts of what MIT needs to be. That has had a huge influence at MIT over time, and it's also led to new institutions and new, literally new edifices in the last few years. the Morningside Academy for Design, with which we partner on undergraduate design programs and programs here in the department, including fellowships for and research fellowships for graduate students. It's led to this new building, which actually looks a lot more finished now than it does in this slide. In these slides, where our school will move in the next few years. And then, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. And these are a few shots of the building and its progress. And that really leads to our continuing raison d'etre, as articulated by William Ware at the very beginning of the school, which is to say that it is the aim of the school to do what it can in its day and generation to ensure that the architecture of the future shall be worthy of the future. So with that, I'll stop my share. And I'll hopefully take some questions before we finish.
Feel free to raise your hand, speak up, or put any
All right.
in the chat.
My audio is not working. Hold on. I think it's working now.
Can you hear us, Nicholas?
Cannot hear you.
Okay. Well, no one else has spoken yet, so.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay.
I have a question. Maybe I should wait until his audio is working, or?
No, I think it's working. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. You mentioned that community service was a big part of the program, especially in relation to the climate programming. I'm wondering like how often the coursework goes out into the community and really gets involved kind of, you know, in real world aspects with real world organizations, and kind of what that relationship is like with MIT and Greater Boston.
That's a really, really good question. And so the answer is a little bit, and can I ask what program you're interested in?
The SMArchS.
Okay. So Lily, the experience of students working in the community changes, particularly over the course of the SMArchS, because when you're an introductory student, what you, not to diminish everything you bring to our community, but what you have to offer a community is less in terms of kind of tangible design outcomes that can be useful to them. And so it's often like essentially a favor from the community to, and communities with which we have longstanding relationships, to come in and help understand what it's like, what a real kind of client type relationship is to work with a community. So those sorts of relationships probably glide in towards your second and third semester, where you will definitely be dealing with real problems in the world and real communities and their problems. But we often are very kind of structured and respectful of those communities, because we don't necessarily assume that we're doing a lot for them. We know they're doing a lot for us. And then as the program continues, especially towards the option studios, Liam will describe later on how that works, but you're much more open in your fourth, fifth, and sixth semesters to take studios. You can choose your flavor of engagement, and studios during at that stage, some of which are joint with our sister Department of Urban Studies and Planning, also has a long history of community action, community engagement. Those studios can be get into much more of the trenches of how you really kind of address the community and work it out. And then there are ongoing, but a lot of these programs bridge on ongoing relationships. For example, with agricultural nonprofit Eastie Farms in East Boston, for example, that runs throughout students working on a kind of civilian climate corps for all of MIT are working with them. We've had studios working with them. We've had other ones. So we try and make sure our community relationships are long-term and not just parachuting in and parachuting out. And then we try and make sure they're reciprocal in terms of the community getting as much or more out of the relationship as we are.
Great, thank you.
And then SMArchS, Bushra, SMArchS AD is more flexible. So you're more in the situation of a student that would be in their kind of option studio time, where you can decide how and whether you want to get involved in community-focused work in the department. Ronald or Dalton, do you want to go ahead and ask a question?
Hi, how's it going? I think you answered a bulk of the question in that first response, but you kind of touched on how planning informs architectural study at MIT. So I just was curious, is that through like typically electives, or is that also woven into studios as well, or just how do those two work together?
In three ways. First of all, electives. So you have actually you're required to take some sort of urban elective during your whole MArch degree, and it can be, of course, in planning. Secondly, through studios. So we have joint studios with planning, and then if a planning studio is dealing with questions of urban design alongside community work, for example, there'll be one in the spring. Students can take that as an option studio. And then finally, we have many students who end up doing a joint degree. You can do a joint, you have to be admitted to both departments, but you can actually do a joint Masters of City Planning and Masters of Architecture in only one additional semester from your MArch degree. Kate, but Kate, you have more than one person with you.
Hi, yeah, my name's Kate. This is my friend Philip.
Hi there. We're in a class together.
Yeah.
Taking a break from the class.
My question is regarding the overlap between the MArch program and the Building Science and Technologies program. I'm curious if the MArch program has access to some of those courses, or if there is like actual building science and practical building knowledge woven into the MArch program separately.
The overlap between the building technology group and its focus on building performance is I'd say a dense part of particularly of the first of 3 required semesters in the MArch degree, where you're taking a class with a building technology instructor that is over time woven so much into the fabric of the curriculum. By the third semester, the studio and the building technology class are basically indistinguishable. You're sort of working on the same thing. We're very fortunate to have some of the best building technology and building performance minds in the world. So we would be we would be not very bright if we didn't involve them closely in the fabric of that education and degree. And then, of course, people go on to take electives, and you can actually get a certificate if you complete sufficient electives. Actually, get a certificate in building technology as part of the MArch degree as well.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Hayden.
Hey, how's it going? This is a more broad-facing question, but would love to hear your opinion. In the collective brain or thoughts of sort that you all hope to cultivate at MIT and in these new cohorts, what are some of the characteristics of new members that folks within your community, in your opinion, value most?
Gosh, that's a subtle and difficult question. I'd say, I'd expand the question, since we're at the beginning of the open house and there are students here from every kind of potential program. I'll use it to talk about our admissions processes more broadly. Students are admitted to either the MArch degree or to a specific concentration in SMArchS. And in all cases, I think it's important to understand that our programs are selective. We select, we don't rank all the students from 1 to 100 and necessarily select the top like 5, for everyone and rank them in order and et cetera, because we're fairly humble about the ability of our admissions processes or any admission processes to make those kinds of fine distinctions. What we do is we look through all applications and try and determine which students meet a certain basic standard for being able to succeed at MIT, which of course is a relatively high standard in terms of your experience, your potential. It's based on, we don't expect students in coming to the MArch degree even to have necessarily any experience in architecture, but we look for their ability to take advantage of and dive into an architectural education. And then once we have a group of students who meet that basic standard, we do try and assemble a class of diverse experiences and contributions, because we're also humble enough to know that it is a quality of any architectural education, of any education, and it's a particular quality of this department that our students learn the most from each other. So if every student looks like you, thinks like you, went to your college, etc., you would learn a lot less than from a more kind of expansive set of backgrounds and groups. And so that's a key principle of admissions here. And the last key principle is, is this program going to make a difference in your life? It makes a difference in everybody's life, but we really are particularly interested in students for whom this experience will be transformative in terms of what they're able to do and the impact they are able to have in the world on the issues that they care about. Does that answer your question, Hayden?
Yeah, I think that was wonderful. The only thing I would ask is, I think that was from a lens of admission, and I was more interested in purely in the ongoing community as you guys are adding. What are people really interested in? What is your community most excited for, I think, in new members and what they can bring to the community?
In terms of what they bring to the community, I mean, as I say, this like different skills, different experiences, and enthusiasm. I mean, this is like one of the most precious parts of being part of a community like this is everyone is very excited to be here and everyone is incredibly curious. And so, to spend your days surrounded by curiosity and excitement is an enormous privilege. And here we get to take it for granted. And that curiosity and excitement actually fuels the creative energy that, buzzes through the whole place.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Christian.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for this. It's a great presentation so far. I'm interested in the History and Theory of Criticism program in art history. And I would just be, I know it's early in the day and probably more will be said on this later, but I would be curious to hear more about the relationship between different programs in the School of Architecture, because it seems certainly that the PhD program here is unlike many other schools in its distinct setup within an architecture school.
Yeah, that's a great question, Christian. I think that we are we have a complex structure in many ways. Our department is like a scale model of the university, is how I sometimes think about it. Like because we have programs in architectural history, we have programs in, separate programs in building performance and engineering, programs in computation, programs in Islamic architecture, even programs in art. Historic and important professional degree in architecture that kind of brings together all those programs and has classes from everyone in them. And yet, we're like 250 people, right? It's at the biggest definition of our community. And so what you'll experience here, I think, especially as a student or even a PhD student in one of the very, particularly in a more advanced PhD program, is a kind of, in some ways, a version of what everyone gets to benefit from, which is a kind of very rigorous education in a key discipline with experts in that discipline. And in the case of the SMArchS, a key professional education that is literally kind of marinating in a broth of a whole bunch of other things that get to influence it and you get to influence by. And if you're kind of exhausted with footnotes, you can go off to a lecture by an artist that is happening in the next room, and re-energize yourself. And so it is it's a very cosmopolitan cloister is how I would look at it. Like you're not surrounded only by people who are just like you intellectually or for that matter in any other way.
Thank you.
I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Ashan?
Hi, excuse me, it's John, it's close.
Okay.
Thank you all for the presentation so far. I'm wondering what are some of the biggest challenges to architectural education and pedagogy that you are noticing in our current sort of world?
Yeah, I mean,
what the difficulties are that you are experiencing with teaching with.
Ask an easy question. No, it's a very, very important question. I think, architecture is about many, many things. The reason that we're So the first pass is architecture is about many things. It's about beauty, it's about community, it's about shaping the world. You know, one of the reasons we're so focused on climate, including the community and equity portion of thinking about the climate crisis, is if we don't solve that thing, we won't get a chance to do any of the other things, right? So underneath, if you look upstream from many of our current challenges, from the inflation caused by the rising price of insurance that's related to climate risks, from kind of even political polarization, etc. The climate crisis is at the root of a lot of it, right? And it's very hard not to draw lines to it, and a kind of and the climate crisis more broadly in the context of a culture of consumption that assumes we take stuff out of the ground, we make stuff with it, we trash it quickly, and we put it back in a big hole in the ground. So that is, describes the traditional building industry in the last century, as well as many, many other things. And because buildings are so big and we make so many of them, they have this huge impact. And so addressing how we build, because we do need to build, buildings wear down, communities need change and transformation, but reconceiving how we build, making the old out of the new, repurposing buildings as we even are with our new home. This is one of the most, it's not the only question of the crisis of our time, but it is, I would argue, one of the most important questions. And it is our privilege and responsibility to be here, particularly at the intersection of professional education, training tomorrow's architects, and the most cutting edge research on how we address the climate crisis, both in terms of questions of building performance and construction, and then especially with our colleagues in DUSP in terms of the communities most affected by the crisis. So our two, just to give you a kind of last piece on this, our two faculty members leading there are 6 pillars across MIT of the climate project. 2 of them are led by architecture faculty. One of them is about sustainable construction, and one of them is about sustainable communities. And so Christoph Reinhardt from our building technology faculty is leading the construction portion. It's more complex, but I'm condensing for time. And then Miho Mazareu is leading the pillar on equitable resilience and sustainable communities. Yashin, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes. Hi, thank you for your presentation. And I just wondering, because I saw there are like 7 different groups, like different directions of study to go. And I'm wondering, like, how flexible is it to like switch between different groups, or like to what extent can students like explore different directions before they choose
Which degree are you interested in?
SMArchS 1.
SMArchS 1. So
Yeah.
SMArchS 1 is the, unlike an American undergraduate degree where you'd start and be broad and then you'd pick a major, the SMArchS degree has a pretty strict curriculum, which Liam will talk about in a moment, which is required because it's like we're training a doctor or a lawyer. There's the stuff you need to know to be an architect. So there's no I wouldn't want you to get the sense that there was an enormous amount of flexibility in that degree. There is some flexibility in electives towards the, especially in the second half of the degree, you get a reasonable amount of electives and ability to take them wherever you want. And then all the different groups and courses of study in the department are like a salad bar or like one of those hotel buffets. You get to serve yourself from each of them. You don't have a plate that's huge. So something might end up with a plate that has a little bit of everything on it, or some people do end up with, that relatively small plate, but full of one thing. And then you might end up getting like a certificate in that thing or something like that. But you've had to leave other stuff on the buffet in order to do that. So it's really ultimately up to each individual student and how they approach that degree. So maybe I'll take the one last question from Stephanie before we hand it over to the next.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation so far. It's been incredibly useful. I am interested in the SMArchS urbanism program.
Yeah.
And I come from a background of, a B.Arch, and I found that my current education has focused very much in terms of urbanism on really understanding the place in which
Yeah.
I'm studying, which was Los Angeles. So, you know, that's a very interesting urban environment.
Right.
And I am very different. And so I guess I'm wondering, to what extent does the program in urbanism explore in depth the urban environment surrounding MIT versus how much is is there a rigorous study of a broader range of more global urban environments? And this may be answered later. I just was curious about this.
The answer to, there will be a SMArchS urbanism presentation later, but I think the very simple and direct answer to the question is yes, which is to say we are deeply embedded in our local community and of course deeply engaged with global issues. Boston and Cambridge and the greater Boston area are a large and disproportionate focus of our urban studies, particularly because it is much more challenging to have the kind of sustained and reciprocal relationship with communities that we're able to have here elsewhere, which is not to say we don't have those relationships elsewhere. We've got a long tradition of working in countries as diverse as Colombia, Thailand. We have the oldest collaborative relationship between of urban study between a US and Chinese university with Tsinghua that started in 1985 that results in workshops every summer in and around Beijing. But I will say we always look for those long-term relationships when we can. And so students benefit, particularly because students benefit enormously from coming into a place and both discovering it for the first time, but also joining a longer and more continuous conversation where the kind of issues and history of a city, which are so multi-layered and complex, are kind of engaged over a span of time that is appropriate to that scale. And maybe we've also even tried to bring that into, I'll say we also tried to bring that into our SMArchS studios in the last 4 or 5 years. Most option studios, for example, are part of a cycle of 3 years of studios studying a particular subject with a kind of symposium or book or research project at the end versus a kind of 16-week one-off, because 16 weeks feels very long when you're in the middle of the semester, but it's actually not enough time to do most of the complex problems we have in our world today justice. So with that, I think I'll pass it over to the next chapter in our morning. And thank you all for coming and hanging out on Zoom, which is always some sort of sacrifice. And we're glad you spent some of the morning with us already.
Thank you, Nicholas. Liam, you're up next.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Nicholas. Thanks, Tessa. Great to have you all here. My name's William O'Brien Jr. I go by Liam, which is the second half of William. I am the SMArch director for the past few years. I'm also an associate professor. I've been at MIT for 15 years. And I'd love to share with you some thoughts about the SMArch program. I'll talk a little bit about the curriculum, as well as give some indication of what our faculty think about. I'll show a couple of different depictions of the curriculum. This one is put together in an effort to transmit the studio centricity of our program. So our SMArch program, as you likely know, is a professional program that's situated within the larger research institution of MIT. The thing that kind of threads all of the experience of our SMArch program together, I would suggest, is the studio experience. And so this kind of graph tries to depict the kind of cycles of design thinking that occur throughout your time within the program. So you'll see at the bottom, there are indications of each of the semesters, the first 3 of which are called core, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. The second set of 3 are option studios. I'll also chat about those for a little bit. And then lastly, the big kind of cycle that you see at the end is the year-long thesis, which overlaps with your last option studio. And I like this graph because it, I think, does a pretty good job of describing the kinds of like durations of exercises, right? So in the first semester of Core 1, there are a kind of increasing length of time for each exercise that continues in Core 2. And then by the time you get to option studios, these are typically semester-long investigations that prepare you for the longer design exercise, a kind of pedagogy for 1, which is thesis. A second reason I like this graph is because each of these individual trajectories is representative of one member of the cohort. And the thinking is that as one sort of spends time here at MIT and goes through the sequence of studios, there is an increasing amount of sort of individual identity that is expressed, tested and expressed. And so you see this chart at the end tries to give a sense for the kind of unique trajectories that are possible through the SMArch curriculum. So what I'd like to do is just kind of break down the experience into 3 chunks: the core, the option, and the studio. I'm sorry, the core, the option, and the thesis, rather. And I'll kind of share a decreasing amount of information for each. The first, I would just say we take our role as faculty who are orienting our students through the core curriculum really quite seriously. So this is a kind of set of responsibilities that we share with our incoming students. And I won't go through all of these, but take a peek through this. We've really gone through the great length to try to understand where each of our students are coming from, help them locate themselves within Cambridge, within this new culture, and really try to help them identify their unique agendas and set them up for success throughout the 3.5-year program. The first core studio that we run, I happen to be the coordinator for that studio. And in that studio, we're really interested in trying to cultivate a cohort identity. So usually around 23 students are coming in, and they are coming from a wide range of backgrounds, some who have no background in architecture, others who have quite a bit. And we're really intent on creating a community and a dialogue across that group. And one way that we do that is through the way that we teach the first semester of Core Studio, which is through a series of riddles. And those riddles are aimed at giving folks without a background access to architectural thinking, while at the same time giving those who do have a background a kind of prompt that gets them thinking anew. So to give you an example, the first riddle that we've been using recently is design a stair to there and a stair to nowhere. So for example, everybody knows what a stair is, but when put into the context of there and nowhere, it starts to get folks with a background thinking anew. And those without a background already have a sense for what a stair means in their experience and can already participate. I would also say Core 1 is really about an increased complexity of context. So if in the first riddle, there's very little context aside from, let's say, narrative or orientation, by the time we get through the third exercise, the third riddle, we're really taking on a much more complex set of contextual constraints, let's say. So what you see on the screen now, for example, is an archive that is designed to go within MIT's campus. And the riddle for this is design a building that is apart and stands apart. And the objective is to really think about the relationship between new and existing and aim to introduce a kind of new institutional identity through the archive within an institution that already has quite a robust identity. And so you see, we kind of quickly go from object making to a building through the first semester. In the second semester studio, and maybe this answers one of the questions posed to Nicholas in the earlier session, we're getting out into the city. We're getting out into Boston, and we're taking on an adaptive reuse project. This is the Strand Theater in Boston, and students are really thinking about cultural institutions, questions of publicness, questions of urbanism, and thinking about how and in what ways they might adjust the Strand Theater in order to open up and make it more accessible. So this brings about questions of access, questions of ADA, and questions of performance. And so there's a wide range of exercises in this that move from kind of performance-based exercises to community-oriented exercises, and ultimately to a building that is an adjusted version of the Strand Theater. So in the second semester, really starting to take on questions of urbanism in preparation for the third core studio, which is, as Nicholas mentioned earlier, a kind of integrated studio where we're marrying some building technology with the studio. And here, students are thinking a lot about the relationship between food and community and food storage and other public programs. And this is a semester where building technology and the studio are really kind of indistinguishable from one another, where students are taking on building at an urban scale, even larger than the previous semester when they were taking on the Strand Theater, and thinking about tectonics and community questions, urbanism questions. And you can see at this point in the core curriculum, there's a lot of facility and a lot of ability to think across all scales and to think across from concept to realization. I'll just mention a couple of recent option studios, but by comparison, if the first 3 semesters are about really orienting oneself within the department, the institute, the city, and really taking advantage of what we have to offer that's close by comparison, the option studios tend to, in most cases, to look elsewhere. So I'll just mention 2 recent studios, one called Odds and Mods by our colleague Sheila Kennedy from Architecture and Urbanism and Caitlin Mueller from Building Technology, where they're looking at waste materials and how to think about those anew, both in terms of like forms of analysis that can help us take stock of waste, and also thinking about ways in which we can organize and imbue order into that waste material in order to have it the architectures of the new. Another option studio that's a recent one is, I like to show this example because it's one where we're kind of reaching across outside of the Department of Architecture to other departments, specifically in this case, Aero-Astro and the Media Lab. And Skylar Tibbetts within the A+U and Computation Group led this studio that stitched together these different departments in order to think about architecture in space. And as part of this studio, going to existing facilities that think about these things, and then making proposals for lunar dwellings, essentially, for the future. And then I won't show examples of thesis, but just to say thesis is a really important part of what we do here at MIT. One way that I like to think about it is a kind of pedagogy for one. So if during the 3 option studios,
ready because there's an MIT.
If one is sort of experimenting with different mindsets, different values through the context of the option studios, by the time one reaches thesis, the aim is that those different tests will have oriented one to think about their own agenda in architecture. And so this is a year-long process where students are connected to faculty advisors And there's a small committee of it, an advisor, a reader, and a student. And there are many different formats that students are working within through thesis. Many make buildings, many think about demonstrations of building technology, some might make performances. So there's a real emphasis in thinking about how best the faculty can support progressive trajectories in architecture. And in the best cases, the thesis is a kind of hinge point between the SMArch curriculum and what students are doing as their career. So I just wanted to share another version of what the curriculum looks like. There was a question in the earlier session about the degree of flexibility versus the amount of required courses. So what you see already located in the graph, in the chart rather, are the required courses. There are electives that you see kind of suspended up above the chart, and there are some recommendations in terms of how and when those electives ought to be taken. But just to give you a sense that we have a kind of rainbow of a curriculum that is reflective of our the strength of our discipline groups. So as you can see, the bottom portion, which is in red, that's the kind of glue to our curriculum, all of the core studios, the optional studios, and thesis. And then you can see strands of other discipline groups that weave in. For example, orange is building technology, history, theory, criticism is in yellow, computation is in blue, and then we also have an art, cultural, technology elective as well as an urbanism elective. One aspect to this chart that is perhaps misleading is the degree to which we integrate our discipline groups in studios, in other A+U courses. So this, because it aims to be distilled and as clear as possible, unfortunately doesn't depict the amount of high hybridity that often occurs in courses. And so just as an example, although urbanism is in purple and it looks as though there's only one small rectangle of urbanism, for sure, at the end of Core 1 Studio, we're dealing with urbanism. For sure, in Core 2 Studio, urbanism is threaded throughout, and absolutely in Core 3 as well. So just to give you an example that despite the sort of clarity with which these boxes are delineated, there's actually quite a lot of overlap and hybridity that goes on in our courses. I'll just wrap up by kind of blitzing through a few works of each of our discipline groups. And so just to give you a sense, I won't go into any detail, but just to give you a sense for some of the things that are on the minds of our faculty, which are reflected in the work of our students. So computational structural optimization is being worked on by Caitlin Mueller. John Oxendorf is constantly thinking about questions of vaulting and part-to-whole relationships. As Nicholas mentioned earlier, we have our building technology who are faculty who are super interested in questions of solar panel optimization. We're oftentimes inventing new modes of fabrication, as in the case of 3D, 4D printing or pneumatics. We have people in work through people like Larry Sass, interested in prefabricated manufacturing, a lot of folks interested in visualization of different modes, people taking on questions of memory, Azra Aksanija doing that. We have people who are literally writing the history of architecture in Mark Yarzenbeck. And we have many folks tackling all sorts of architecture and urbanism, from ambient plant illumination, fabrication, as was already mentioned, resilience and community building, as well as folks looking at deep histories and thinking about those histories anew, and also folks who are committed to the profession of architecture in modes of cultural production. So that's a blitz through some of the things that we're thinking about in the SMArch curriculum and our faculty work. I would love to stop sharing and see what kinds of questions we might have.
You have one question in the chat room.
I had a quick
Is it
question.
true that MIT and Harvard share some courses, option studios, and how does that process look like? Great question. We are friends with the GSD. We have a lot of crossover in terms of faculty who are visiting and giving feedback to our students and vice versa. It's not often the case that option studios are taken from the GSD, but there's quite a lot of flexibility in terms of our students taking courses there, and likewise GSD students taking courses of ours. It's a fairly seamless process. The only thing to look out for if you're going to engage in that process is timing. The semesters are slightly different. I think GSD starts a little bit before us, so one just has to have foresight to anticipate which courses they might be interested in and get in on that earlier. Anderson.
Hi. I had a question about some of the international opportunities available in the SMArchS program. It was mentioned a little bit in the introduction, and I'd love to learn more if there's typical programs that students pursue or what the options are there.
Right. Okay, sure. So our option studios are a great time to travel. Most of our option studios do travel all over the world. I think it was mentioned, recently, Asia, Iceland, South America, Mexico. The list is endless. There are also opportunities in the summer. There are a number of fellowships that are awarded for travel. There are also things beyond the department at the institute level where you can get funding for international travel, something called MISTI grants, MITSI grants. So there's no shortage of opportunities to travel. It's just a question of how you want to balance that travel vis-a-vis experience working in internships, things like this, which you will get feedback from your advisor and any mentors that you develop along the way. But yeah, as you'll find, there's really no shortage of opportunities to travel.
Awesome, thank you.
Luke.
Hi, Liam. Thank you. I have a quick question about hybridity in regards to the school, as you said, in the architecture school, how there's a great hybridity between the programs. But I was wondering in the wider university whether there was access to, or how SMArchS students have had access to other departments across the wider university before, or whether there's issues with that, or do we actually have like a totally intertangible university system whereby you can have access to different professors or specialists in different departments?
Sure, great question. So we are, as I mentioned, a professional program within a research institution, and we look at that opportunity as really trying to do two things well. One is to give you the best professional preparation possible. At the same time, we ask the question to ourselves all the time, what makes our program unique given its situation, given the way that it's situated? So we absolutely want our students to take advantage of the fact that they are at MIT and not only at the MIT Department of Architecture. So that's a balancing act, right? How do you make sure that you give the right time to prepare someone for the profession, at the same time give them the right amount of flexibility so that they can become who they need to become based on what's available to them at MIT. I would say, so there are 3 totally open electives within the curriculum, and that's an opportunity to explore outside the department. And there are also other kinds of initiatives and opportunities that are outside of the curriculum itself, which I think could be explored. One thing that I would say is distinguishing us from other programs is the fact that we rub up against other departments literally physically, given where we are at the moment. And so I think just being within that context changes the way one views their own professional development. So although that's not, part of the curriculum, it is just a different context, and one which I think a lot of our students acknowledge, and is one of the reasons that they choose to study here.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, sure, Luke. Daniel.
Sorry. Hello. I had a question, perhaps selfish question. But how do you see someone with a principally design-focused background contributing to the community at MIT School of Architecture, especially considering that, as was mentioned previously, what we're hoping to do or you are hoping to do is answer the great question of our time is, building sustainably, building a future for humanity and the greater global civilization.
Great. So if I understood the question, Daniel, it's really about what is the role of design within our program, right? I mean, it's central. It is the center of gravity, I would say, to the entire program, really. I mean, one of the what your question gets me thinking about is the meaning of design now, right? As we have watched, the term design is now kind of stitched together, associated with many aspects of academia, of industry, et cetera. So the question that I think we have as a faculty is, how can we leverage design thinking once again in a kind of architectural manner? And I feel like the program that we offer aspires to have architectural design thinking at the forefront. Yes, we do have these sort of peripheral ways of thinking about design that relate to technology, industry, et cetera, which are really critical to our identity. But at the heart of our program is architectural design thinking. So it would be highly valued if somebody had a background in design, especially if they're interested and enthusiastic about leveraging that toward architectural ends.
Thank you.
Dante. Good to see you, Dante, again.
Good too. Yeah, so I was just wondering, my name is Dante for people who might not know me, but I was asking, when you have students who go through the program and they also build these relationships in such intimate environments, like after they graduate, what are their experiences with MIT? What's their relationship still? Like, are they collaborating to fulfill like these social, environmental, sustainable projects? So yeah, could you give a little bit more background on that?
Yeah, I can. There's probably a lot of ways to answer that question, Dante, which relates to like the length of time one is away from MIT. So maybe I could just speak to maybe 3 lengths of time. One is immediately after. So we do have a program for teaching fellows who it's a competitive program where students who are graduating, who are usually interested in teaching. We accept 2 teaching fellows, sometimes 3 teaching fellows, and they remain with the program and they begin to teach their own thing. They begin to develop their own pedagogy. And so we keep a couple or a few of them close immediately after graduation in an effort to give them more support so that they launch and go do their own thing. I guess a second scale would be, a few years out. We'd love for our students to go away, to do things and to take advantage of their education to make their mark elsewhere. But we do see students coming back. Sometimes they come back in other types of fellowships. Sometimes they come back in lectureships. Sometimes they come back on the faculty. So there is that kind of relationship between our students and the program. And there are also projects that get continued, labs that get continued to be, people who are working in labs stick around and push the research of various faculty members forward. So it's a tricky thing to answer, because on the one hand, our students go everywhere all over the world and make impact, and on the other hand, there are some students who stay close because they want to remain at the best institution in the world. So I hope I answered your question, Dante. I realize we're kind of close on time. Maybe we'll take one more question and then I can hand it off to my colleague, Anna Milyachki. Dalton.
Yeah, sorry, this is my second question, so I apologize for taking second opportunity. But you did mention travel and option studios. I was curious whether travel opportunities are always international or if there's ever domestic opportunities. I guess alluding to someone mentioned earlier a connection to Tuskegee University and interest in like the South in that capacity and African American communities.
Right. Yeah, no, I didn't mean to give a false impression that we only leave. We do things here domestically as well. Yeah, the program that you're mentioning, Dalton, is one that is ongoing. If I'm not mistaken, we send students to Tuskegee during IAP, Independent Activities Program, which is in January. And that's an ongoing program run by my colleague, Carrie Norman. And yeah, we do have, like I mentioned in one of the option studios, folks went to Texas recently to understand, NASA and SpaceX and things like this. So for sure, there is domestic travel as well. And as I mentioned in an earlier question, a lot of resources to help with that travel. The option studios are covered as part of what you get when you come, and there's a lot of other opportunities to get funding for travel as well. I'm going to stop there and hand it off to my colleague Anna Milyachki.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to take over and talk about SMArchS. SMArchS as a whole program and in relation to MArch for a little bit, but I'm also going to share my my slides with you. Well, let me just find the right way to do that. Okay, let me know what you're seeing. Okay, I think you're seeing the correct window. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our fall open house. I'm Anna Milyachki, director of the SMArchS program, as well as SMArchS architectural design. And I want to give you a kind of a broad strokes introduction for the whole program across all discipline groups. And then if you're interested in a specific discipline group, you might be able to go to that sort of breakout room a little bit later. So the Master of Science in Architecture Studies is a 2-year program of advanced study founded on research and inquiry in architecture as a discipline and as a practice. The program is intended both for students who already have a professional degree in architecture and those interested in advanced non-professional graduate study, but there are different emphasis on this, on these two ends of the spectrum in each of the groups. And you can ask them specifically, but I can also demystify that a little bit today. SMArchS prepares students for careers in research, design, and teaching, as well as in practice. And what you're seeing here is last spring's thesis prep class for SMArchS AD, but it's generally operating in small groups. Nicholas already introduced this particular quote by William Ware. But so I'll tell you again about it. In conceiving the first school of architecture in the United States, architect William Ware pledged MIT to a very important task of producing architecture and architects worthy of the future. Future is always part of an architect's perspective task. It is constitutive of architectural thinking, and it has been summoned repeatedly through history as the framework and the topic of hallucinating as well as willing new worlds, near and far beyond the present. More importantly, Ware's qualifier binds architecture and future through qualitative judgment, inviting us to contemplate futures worth living, architectures worthy of those futures, and the criteria for evaluating that. So the SMArchS program at MIT is a laboratory, or maybe multiple laboratories, in which we speculate on diverse forms of agency for future architectures. Future is not, of course, a singular construct, and in my mind, perhaps the most useful contemporary conception of future may be as a series of increasingly dire prospects marching towards us, all collateral outcomes of the naive faith of previous eras in unfettered progress. These include major migrations induced by climate change and patterns of global economy, extreme weather, resource depletion, uneven and unjust distribution of economic means, crumbling infrastructures, pollution, AI, and so many other forms of alienation. So turning these prospects into opportunities or ensuring better prospects for all requires many types of architectural projects of different temperaments and temporalities. And this is where the SMArchS program with its different disciplinary and epistemological frameworks and outcomes comes in. So together, MIT faculty, guest critics, and students cultivate here expertise, sensibilities, and critical questioning necessary to deliver architectural objects with specific effects, architecture as an active participant in the production of urban fabric and material culture, understanding and shaping of political and environmental territories, architecture as the agent of industry's transformation, architecture as a means to address larger societal questions, to critically intervene in discourse, to induce hesitation in various practices of daily life, and rewire the patterns of understanding and living. As researchers, authors, and producers, MIT faculty work on the edges where the present turns into the future. But as pedagogues, we embrace the future by trusting our students, whose thinking and sensibilities will by definition defy the standards of the present, perhaps most notably in the SMArchS program. Here are some statistics of the SMArchS program. We currently have, and this is answering a question that I saw earlier in chat, but we currently have 50 SMArchS students across 2 years of the program. And the percentage of that really works out in 13% or 26% of those are US, 4 are permanent residents, and 70 are international. And you're seeing the numbers again across different discipline groups that combine the 2 years, and we have around 50-50 male and female. And for funding, a baseline, as a kind of baseline, we're admitting students with 80% tuition, but very soon we're hoping to arrive at 100 in the near future. So it might be useful to distinguish the logic of the SMArchS program from the professional MArch program and most other professional and post-professional programs. Well, all discipline groups, and I've listed them here with our little acronyms for them. This is architectural design, urbanism, building technology, computation, history, theory, criticism, and ACPIA. All of these discipline groups contribute and intersect with the MArch program. In the context of SMArchS, you are really benefiting from the kind of depth of research in each of the discipline groups. And they all provide pedagogical and research frameworks and guidance to ensure that sort of depth of research and inquiry. And students, though located in each of these groups, tend to, by the time that they're doing their thesis, interweave expertise and interests across them in a way that is specific to their own project. I want to introduce you to the characters who are leading these groups. And so I'm leading architectural design. Rafi Segal is currently reading urbanism, but Rania Gossen will be taking over next year. Caitlin Mueller is leading building technology. Larry Sass is leading computation. Arindam Datta is leading SMArchS in history, theory, and criticism. And Nasser Abad is leading ACPIA. And together we constitute the curriculum committee for SMArchS, in which we're joined by Skylar Tibbetts, who straddles architectural design and computation, and also teaches one of the key or first classes that everyone experiences. So you're seeing here a combined set of curricula for all discipline groups SMArchS. Each discipline group has 3 to 6 required classes, which include thesis prep and thesis. The colloquium, which I mentioned, is taught by Skylar Tibbetts, and there's a methods class in every discipline group that helps support a kind of a discipline group forms of inquiry and research. Urbanism is currently the only group that has a required studio. A studio is optional for other groups. And so this is a key, very important difference from most other post-professional programs that you might be looking at. And if you study this map, you will see that there are some alignments between different discipline groups. The key are the 2 capstone pedagogical offerings, the colloquium at the beginning and the thesis at the end, and I'll show you some of those sort of images. SMArchS students participate in TAing studios. So if you were listening to Liam's explanation or story about SMArch, it is important for SMArchS insofar as that is a site or a kind of way of getting teaching experience. And also traveling here is a studio of mine that went to Belgrade, Serbia 2 years ago with the SMArchS TA. Here he is, Ekin. Bilal, who also was a research assistant at the Urban Risk Lab. So this combination of TA-ships and RA-ships is something that a lot of our students are doing. You're seeing here a studio that also included a SMArchS TA and went to Mexico to think about and explore brick making and waste. Another one that went to the Amazon, also including a SMArchS TA. We have been looking for various opportunities to socialize, and there's one coming up really next week that we're looking forward to, in which basically all the SMArchS students as a cohort will come and meet with the faculty who teach and lead them. Now, I want to stress and maybe illustrate and celebrate the diversity of research, both in terms of urgent topics that SMArchS students tend to take up, and in terms of the very different definition of research across different discipline groups. All SMArchS students work with 2 to 3 committee members on their final project, and this is the kind of toward the project towards which everything sort of orients by the end of the 2 years. And the keywords that we use to describe the SMArchS activity, research and inquiry, as you will see in the student work that follows, take different form and follow different methodologies and epistemic frameworks, and they correspond therefore to different definitions of research. Here you're seeing an old image of a presentation of the SMArchS architectural design thesis project that was looking at the way in which patterns of thinking are transmitted in architecture, or thinking through patterns is transmitted in architecture in pattern books, but also graphically across contemporary media in architecture. It was rendered through a set of animations, and animations were really important for us during the pandemic, where a lot of projects took that form. But what you're seeing here is a set of films from a project, or stills from films for a project that was dwelling on the old self-build books in Mexico, while considering the real constraints of the contemporary moment and production of housing in that context. It was done by Rodrigo Cesarman, who would or was last year the curator of the Mexican Pavilion at the Venice Biennale, and his partner at an important small firm in Mexico, Apre de Lesp. There's projects in recladding for climate crisis and repair, concrete printing, or the aesthetic effects of glitches. Here, Zach had a fellowship immediately after his SMArchS at MIT at Michigan. Mariana currently teaches at Texas Tech in Huckabee. Mohamed Nale produced a project on the night sky across southern Lebanon, the sky that's currently lit up in various ways. He got a teaching fellowship immediately after his SMArchS at MIT, and then continued now onto a tenure track job at Ohio. Zach Schumacher was interested in the relationship between the bodily and the digital and has been now teaching in New York and at Princeton while continuing some of this research. Urban projects or SMArchS urbanism tend to focus on the development of critical urban design as well as its history and theory. And you're seeing an excerpt from Gabriel Kozlovsky's thesis. Gabriel worked on Mexico City and has subsequently also curated a Brazilian pavilion in Venice and is currently a PhD student at Harvard. There are projects that have dealt with sort of material resources from oil to soil here in Amazonia, to projects thinking about extraction in Armenia, here presented through stills from a film, or water in a variety of different places. And then there's also more projects that take the form of scholarly writing and research. And you're seeing here Malcolm Rio's SMArchS excerpt. He looked at identity, gender identity, and urbanism of New York and is currently doing a PhD at Columbia. SMArchS BT explores ways to use design and technology to create buildings that contribute to a more humane and environmentally responsible built world. And they sometimes include, material experimentation and organization with an idea to affect both design and industry. Some theses tend to take on measurement, testing, lab work, and produce scientific papers to propose smarter techniques in building and in order to affect both industry and academia. Mohammed Ismail finished his SMArchS here at MIT and then also his PhD and is currently teaching at UVA. There's also ways or a lot of work is looking at the way in which the environmental dimension of architecture can be optimized and made smarter. As well as thinking about how material and geometry might contribute to thinking about sustainability or working with sustainability. Kylie Fickert is now a PhD student in our own building technology program. Projects in Computation Group examine the varied nature and practice of computation in architectural design and the ways in which design, meaning, intention, and knowledge are constructed through sensing, thinking, and making computationally. And I thought I would start with Skylar Tibbitz's excerpt, so 2010, 14 years ago. But generally, these works in computation result in new computational tools, processes, and theories. And so for Skylar, he began thinking about self-assembly in his SMArchS thesis, and he is currently running the self-assembly lab at MIT. There are projects that are trying to figure out forms of human-computer interactions, such that, intuitive gesturing can become or take part in the realm of digital production. Or, for example, there's a project that was looking at taking on the way that the Bedouins in the Negev desert occupy territory and to enable the construction and taking down of their housing. Nof Nathanson was for a while also teaching at the Negev school in Israel and is now here in a PhD in computation. Some of the projects result in extremely specific, highly precise proposals, like this one for liquid metal printing developed across computation and mechanical engineering. And I'm sucker for images, so not showing you the extensive math that comes with this, but just the kind of image that I captured from the thesis. Zain Karzan was also a fellow he was our own MArch student and then a fellow for a while in fabrication and is now, after his SMArchS, PhD student at ETH. Most of HTC work takes on historical and theoretical topics in architecture and art, relying on archives and historical narratives, like this recent project on the seeding of specific kinds of ownership and architecture into the American dream, and conversely, on the socialist activism among US architects, revising thus the long-standing notion that the US modernism had been cleaned of its ideological baggage when it crossed the ocean. Or, for example, here's a project on the history, meaning, and the fate that has befallen memorial parks in Japan. Another one on the Trans-Alaska pipeline. Then I wanted to bring your attention to thresholds as something that many of our SMArchS students work on. And here you have two HTC SMArchS students who edited the thresholds a while ago in 2015, but they both now run their respective successful design firms, and they continue to write and produce exhibitions and teach. And Anne Louis, whom you might know from Future Firm, has also served significantly as one of the curators of the US Pavilion in Venice in 2018. The Aga Khan program for Islamic architecture at MIT focuses on the art and architecture of the Islamic world, with projects that take the form of design research and interventions, as well as history and theory. And this is a project or a story from Akpia on the presence of women in the Book of Games in the 13th century, or another one that was talking about world building in the 1001 Nights and received the thesis prize. Now, we just introduced an event last year where at midterm for the SMArchS thesis, we had something like open studios sponsored by the Student Council, which invited the rest of the school to see, and also the cohort itself to see the work in progress. And this is sort of the work in progress at that moment from various corners of SMArchS. And maybe it's useful to just touch base on this SMArchS thesis timeline, though we can talk about that, and maybe it's a little too hard to focus that closely on the final kind of cornerstone piece of this project. But basically, we attempt to have everyone with their advisors until the fall or in the fall of the second year. And then the public event is a big celebration for all of us, which these are the final images from a SMArchS urbanism project, a SMArchS architectural design project, and the celebration at the very end. So this is where I'll stop this particular presentation, and then we can, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about this program. Knowing that you will get more responses from people if you're joining specific breakout rooms for specific discipline groups. So let me know.
There's a few questions coming in the chat.
Yeah, so I'm seeing pin So I do think that some of the kind of specific questions to the portfolio, I would ask from the computation group specifically. I'm not sure if they have a breakout room, but maybe Tessa and Kateri will help us with that. But of course, having programming background is useful. It just, but it's not absolutely necessary. It really matters or it's important to have a sense of what you're doing. And this is the key thing about the SMArchS program. You are arriving for 2 years of that program. We do expect a little more clarity about, or let's say, slightly more clearly articulated interests than we do expect from SMArchS, so that you can hit the ground running when you arrive here. So if your interest requires programming, then that's great. If it requires programming and you don't have it, there are ways to acquire it in the context of MIT. You can also ask me these things. It's harder to read them. Let me see. So the main difference between SMArchS and the SMArch program is that the MArch program is a professional program. SMArchS is not a professional program, it is a research program. And so you may be able to, I would think of them really in tandem for Minza, who's asking about the difference between them and the kind of trajectory in the field. Having SMArchS in urbanism will direct you towards questions of territory and urbanism in a way that will be more specific than, of course, the MArch program. Thank you for.
Excuse me,
Okay,
I have a
maybe-
question.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about PhD programs, and I wanted to know what is the process to apply for a PhD program, like let's say for HTC.
Well, so we don't have someone representing PhD, right? So the key thing to do is really to look up the HTC description of what they're looking for online, but the kind of admissions process is more or less the same. I do think that HTC expects you to, or it's good, it's useful to contact the faculty in that program to get a sense of whether there's enough sort of ways to support your interests in this context and whether you are in a way prepared to take it on here. But that's not, I'm not heading the HCC programs, I mean, or the PhD program. So let me try to answer more SMArchS questions. Yeah, Bushra.
Hello, I will put my hand down. Yeah, so I had a question regarding sort of the prompt that we have for the SMArchS program, which asks about sort of a research prompt and then how or which faculty would we want to work with at MIT. So if you had any guidance on how specific you want that answer, and is that flexible if we didn't maybe say the right professors, but you think that there are other professors that might align with the topic better in the future?
I mean, I think we've tried to actually lower the volume on that part. You know, we know that you don't necessarily know who all of us are. It's much more important that you describe well your interest and the way in which you arrived at them and how you think you're going to be working with that in the future, and to think of that text in a way as a piece of your submission, not only a kind of answer to the questions, but also something that has a shape, right? As a piece of writing. Then I think if you have seen already or found someone that you can imagine working with, that's useful, but I wouldn't make that the key focus of the piece of your text. Eugene? Okay, let me see if I have, yes, go ahead. Can't hear you. Do you want to try? I can't. Okay. Maybe I'll answer Aishwarya's question about SMArchS urbanism and
Sorry.
experience in the field. Let me just answer this and then. So you don't have to have experience in the field, what you're calling practical training. But sort of your education needs to be, or you have to understand that the SMArchS urbanism degree is not a professional degree, that it will not provide you a kind of licensure degree. So when you're coming from wherever you're coming, you have to kind of think about that. What is your next step, and whether the SMArchS urbanism can fulfill it for you. So work experience is really a question of, let's say, whether or not it matters to your interests is how we're going to look at it, or we're going to look at it in the context of your larger narrative. Sorry, Liu Jin, you wanna?
Yeah, sorry, I just figured out my mic issue. My question is like sometimes, the research topics kind of interdisciplinary. So I don't know like what's the major difference between the different programs like the computation or the advanced design and also the building technology. I mean, like, what if the research topic I'm really interested in, sometimes maybe it's more about the design, like a new, like how to think about the design questions, but sometimes you also need the support of the digital study, or sometimes you maybe need to invite some new building technology. So like, how could we exactly to know which one we should apply? Or yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping a little bit that kind of presenting the thesis work across the groups would give you a taste a little bit of what kind of work happens in the discipline groups. When you're here, no matter where you are, you'll be able to combine expertise across the discipline groups. In fact, if you look at the kind of advisor list for most students, it is crisscrossed in every way. We don't require you, for the most part, to have the advisor from your own discipline group either, so the primary advisor, but someone from the program. So you can braid expertise when you're here. The thing to think about as you're thinking about applying is what are the kinds of, let's say, deliverables that you're seeing coming from different discipline groups, because that will guide you in a particular way. The way that building technology thinks about research will be different than the way design thinks about research, even if it is leaning towards building technology questions, right? So that's what I would look at. What is the work that speaks to you when you look at the work?
Okay, I gotcha. Thank you.
Viola.
Okay, yeah. My question is in respect of admission requirements for a BT. I'm talking specifically to the IELTS test of English requirements for someone that has done master's degree from a place like United Kingdom. This kind of applicant does still require to submit test of English, or it can be waived? That is my first question. My second question is in respect of supervisor, getting a supervisor. Is it require contact a supervisor before submitting application, or application can be submitted?
So that's the easy question to answer. So I'm going to start there. Maybe the other one is easy too, but I don't have the answer ready. So no, you don't have to contact professors before you apply. In fact, it is very hard when we are contacted by a lot of people before someone has applied to kind of guide you in that process, because the numbers make it very hard. So your first question was about English requirement, right?
Yeah.
And if you've finished masters in the UK.
Yeah.
So Tessa and Kateri, do you know?
I can go ahead and put that information in the chat.
That would be great. Thank you.
And we have a hand that's been up for a while, and I was able to see your video.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I mispronounced Dehan.
I think we talked.
Yeah,
Dehan,
that's correct.
you wanted to know about PhD program, right? Oh no, maybe not.
No.
Okay, yes, ask. Sorry. I thought it was
Oh
this.
yeah, my question was about how common is it, or like how encouraged is it in the faculty to collaborate with faculties outside of architecture, like engineering or natural science, and also how possible is it for the students of SMArch to be involved in that research process?
With other faculty. So we encourage you to collaborate across other faculty, but that is something that we don't enable to specific channels, right? So there's lots of faculty here that you are likely going to encounter and work with, but the university is big, and you can knock on anyone's door here and get some form of reply. There have been students who have worked with lots with comparative media studies, with nano, and with engineering. Certainly, depending on what SMArchS you're interested in, the BT and computation link to computer science and engineering is very common. So there is a way to do a kind of a degree that combines the two and that combines the advisors from both kind of realms. But you have to do it in time to meet our sort of timeline and process so that you can do it. But what are you interested in? What's your...
I'm majorly interested in computation.
Okay, yeah. So these are some of our computation students are the most commonly have the kind of cross departmental links, including Skylar himself. Let me see if there's anything else. Is there anything else that's staying unanswered?
I think we've gotten all of it. And we are at time for
Okay, we are.
the session. Thank
All
you,
right.
Anna, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, everyone, and ciao.
Darren, are you with us?
Yep.
Wonderful. So now we will hear from Darren on some of our most frequently asked questions regarding the application and generally the admissions process.
Hey, everyone. I'm Darren. I coordinate the graduate program application process, and that involves changes to the Slate application system and communicating with all of you. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen. And I wanted to just direct you to, if you haven't seen it yet, the place on the website where you can get the most information, and that is within our admissions section under graduate admissions. And here are a number of useful links and information, useful dates. So the applications are all due on January 7th. But just keep in mind that we do have a staff break from the 23rd until the 3rd, so we won't be available to answer emails during that time. So it's, although you don't have to have your application submitted by the 7th, you may want to review the application process and make sure that you've had any questions answered before we go on break, and that just gives you extra time to handle that. The results are released not all at once. They're released on an ongoing basis, depending on which program. So we may have results going out the beginning of March all the way until the beginning of April. We do try to have them all out by March 15th. That is our goal. The spring open house will be provided to those who are admitted, and then the April 15th is the deadline that everybody knows. So basically, there's a bunch of information here pertaining to admissions in general, but then down here we have application instructions that apply to the majority of programs. But the program-specific requirements down at the bottom is where you can get really good specific information about each program that you're applying to. So if you are applying to SMArchS, each program has its own specifics. So it'll help you refine your application by reviewing this area and just paying attention to what each of those groups is looking for. A couple notes. One is that if you are applying to one SMArchS program, but you are interested in another, the other program that you're interested in may take an interest in your application. It's not a guarantee, but if you mention in your statement that your research crosses two areas, that may enable the group to see that your application could cross that area. So if they are reviewing it, we may write you and say, would you like to be considered for this other program instead? Because there is a lot of overlap between some of those programs. You have also the option to apply to 2 or more SMArchS programs, but that would require drafting a specific application to each. If you are applying to a PhD program and you're not sure if you are interested in the SMArchS program, it's best to just have one application to the PhD program, because the PhD committees are often the same people as the SMArchS committees, and they may admit you to the SMArchS program instead of the PhD. But if you apply just to the SMArchS, you would not be then admitted to the PhD program. So If you're unsure which to apply to, then apply to the PhD, and you may find that the SMArchS program is interested in you. Another note about the test requirement, the English test score requirement. If you have not taken the test, but you're realizing that you don't have a score, and you don't have time to take the test, then you can click the button saying, I would like to have a waiver, and then explain your situation in the space provided. And that won't guarantee you a waiver, but it will show the faculty what your specific circumstances are when they're reviewing your application. So they won't outright ignore the application because you don't have a test score that's required, but they can then see what your experience is, because we realize that there's a lot of gray area in English experience, and it's not always clear on paper. So, but if you have taken the test, then your score does speak for itself. So we will see the score. But another note about that is we do not require the official score to be sent from ETS to us when you apply. So if you took the test and you know your scores, you can self-report your scores on the application without submitting your official scores, and that can save you some money. So we're just hoping to make it easier for you. But when you are admitted, we then require the official scores to be sent from ETS. So just keep in mind that there will be a message on your application if you have not sent your official scores. It's just indicating that we don't have your official scores, but that is not an error, and we will not ignore the application because it's missing the official scores. So as long as you just explain why you don't have scores, we'll be aware. And if you have submitted your scores, like if you say I have an IELTS of 7 and we don't have the official score, that's okay because we will trust you. And then if you're admitted, we'll expect the official score. So just don't be put off by that and be concerned that it has that message. So I think that covers the majority of that. So what I'll do is, let's see, stop sharing and just open it up to any questions about the application process. I see a question about the GRE. Yeah, the GRE is not required, hasn't been required for several years. We won't actually see your scores if you do submit them. So you can save yourself money submitting a GRE. We wouldn't see it anyway. I don't see any hands. Oh, wait, here we go. So Hayden.
Yeah, fairly simple, but regarding the prerequisite courses for MArch that need to be taken from a accredited undergraduate school, is there a way we could email in to confirm that we meet those? It seems pretty specific and case by case scenario wise.
Unfortunately, there's so much volume in that we do not have the bandwidth. I do not have the bandwidth to review all of the transcripts, but I will put in the chat right now the kind of basic language that can help sculpt a little bit of what your next decision might be.
Understood. Thank you.
I think the IELTS online version is accepted. We've been accepting the ETS TOEFL for quite some time. 22. The TOEFLs expire after 2 years. And what that means is that we will, even if we know your score, we cannot contact them and get a verification that the score is right. So there's a process where if we know your score and your name, we can call ETS, and they won't even tell us the score. We have to tell them the information, and they will verify that it's accurate, but they will stop doing that if your score is over 2 years old. So any scores that you're reporting should be within 2 years, and then that would mean that the official scores are available for you to send them to us. Question about undergrad. We do not have a policy that allows you to bypass the test score requirement if you have a 4-year degree in the US or in any other English-speaking institution. So if English is not your first language, you do need the test score. You cannot avoid the test score by taking a 4-year degree in an English-speaking country. I know other schools do have that policy. We do not have that policy. The writing sample, I would, yeah, go to the HTC session. It's basically just an excerpt of writing that you've done usually. Leola?
Okay, I want to find out if I know master's degree is a prerequisite for PhD admission. That I want to know if academic master's is the one that is required or professional master's is also acceptable.
I believe either would be acceptable.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
In fact, I think computation PhD does allow PhD study with a 4-year bachelor's degree. I don't think they require a master's at all, but that's the one program that doesn't. Anjum, what is your question? Prerequisite for applicants seeking scholarship. It depends on the program. If you're applying to the PhD, all of those programs are fully funded, and the majority of the other programs are well funded, not necessarily all tuition, but usually 75% or above. Interviews, you could pursue that before or after the application. It may be helpful to do it before you submit the application, because then you would have a chance to change anything based on your feedback. You do need a separate application for 2 different SMArchS programs, and the reason is that you would want to craft your statement specific to that program and speak to how your experience would work with that program. So yes, you would need 2 separate applications. Although if you apply to one and you write your statement to that one, like for example, there's a lot of crossover between computation and building technology. So if you were applying to computation, you could just indicate in your statement that my research does cross over into building technology, and I would be interested if my application were to end up in that group. But again, if you want to guarantee and craft an application specific and make your best foot forward to each program, then you would want a separate application. PhD, no, it is not mandatory, but it is helpful to have a conversation with faculty because it can help them understand who you are and what you bring to the program, but it also helps you understand if you're applying to the right program. Deficiencies, you do have the opportunity to take any classes during the summer before enrolling. So if you do have a deficiency, you could take an online class or a summer course to make sure that you have that transcript available when enrolling. Is that correct, Tessa and Kateri?
Yes. All right, thank you, Darren. We're gonna go ahead and turn our time over to Nandini. You're still here with us, right?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone.
Wonderful, thank you.
No problem. My name is Nandini Chowdhury. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Belonging Officer for the Department of Architecture. And I'm just going to take a little bit of time just to describe my role, what I do at the department, some DE&I initiatives that we offer as students here that students can participate in, and also the applicant mentorship program, which I know some of you are actually involved in, but for those who are not, I'll talk a little bit about that. That's a great resource for prospective students to connect with current graduate students here in our department, but talk a little bit about that in just a second. But I know Nicholas had mentioned earlier in our session that diversity, equity, and belonging has been a part of our department, for a very long time. And that stands true to this day. And so part of my role is to offer student support for our students here at MIT and offer any guidance or counsel when it comes to diversity, equity, and belonging initiatives that students want to be a part of or that they want to start. Some great examples are student group opportunities where students can create their own centric groups to provide community. And then also sending students to the National Organization Minority of Architects Conference. Some of you might have participated or know about it. I'll put links in the chat, but that is a fantastic conference where it helps build connections. Within MIT, we have a chapter here at MIT in our department, which is great. But it also provides a networking opportunity for students to meet with other professionals, meet other students, and create a network that way. And every year we send students to the conference and help fund that, which is a great opportunity. We also mentioned that we have the Tuskegee Exchange Program, which is another amazing initiative where we bring Tuskegee undergraduate students here to MIT campus, and they have a chance to work with our current students and with faculty who are participating in the program. And Carrie Norman is heading that up for this year. And then vice versa, our MIT current graduate students will then head down to Alabama to do workshops and work with students on Tuskegee's campus. So it's a meaningful program. It's open to all of our graduate students who want to participate, and it's a mentoring opportunity for the undergraduate students at Tuskegee to meet with graduate students and connect with them. And that's also just another opportunity to exchange our work and research with Tuskegee as an ongoing historical connection. And so the last thing I'll talk about is the Applicant Mentorship Program, otherwise known as AMP. And I know that some of you are participating in it now, but we're opening up another round of applications for those of you who are not involved yet. I'll share the link in the chat shortly. But the AMP program is another fantastic way to get guidance and advice from our current graduate students. They can help you. We'll do our best to try and match you with a mentee if possible, a mentor if possible. Sometimes that may not be the case, but even if we can't connect you to a mentor, we will work with you to help answer any of your questions. But your mentor is a current MIT architecture graduate student who can help guide you in writing your personal statement, give advice on which faculty to look at for their profiles and do your research, and even just chat with you on what it's like to be a student here in our department and what life is like here on campus and in Cambridge. So it's a great program, highly recommend it. I'll put the AMP link in the chat shortly. And that pretty much summarizes what I have for you today. I think we still have some time for questions. Moving forward, let's see, we don't get confirmation the application or not. Okay. Tamina, did you put in an application already? Okay. I can look up to see if your application came through. So I'll double check that and let you know. Any other questions about DEI and DEB initiatives within our department?
Hi, I guess I did have a question. You mentioned that there's support for students who want to start certain DEI initiatives at the school, and I was wondering if you could maybe provide examples of things that current students are working on, I guess, outside of you know, their specific program and more to do with the school as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. A great example is we have a group called Shift W, which was started by two of our current students. And the premise of Shift W is that it provides a network and support for folks who identify as women or non-binary graduate students within Department of Architecture to come together and do presentations, workshops. They even put on their own exhibits and just hold space for women and non-binary folks who are part of our department. We also, as I mentioned, we have the NOMA chapter here at MIT, which is also student run. And the NOMA chapter also helps with developing lectures and bringing in speakers who are of a minority background. And they also work with me to just provide feedback on, you know, interdepartmental policies and initiatives that they would like to see happen on campus. So those are some two of our good examples of what groups are here. And then right now we're working with a couple of students to kick off new groups for this academic year. So it's an ongoing process. So the possibilities are endless, you know, so when you if and when you come to our campus, you know, come with your ideas on what kind of groups you would want to see within our department or what kind of initiatives, because we are here to support that and make it a reality, if you will.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Hayden, go ahead.
Yeah, expanding off of that, to be a little bit more specific, is there anything involving disabilities that students are doing on campus that you would like to highlight?
Yes, that's a great question. That is an ongoing important piece that we're addressing within our department. And that's actually one of our tasks as part of like strategy and equity planning for our department. And I'm working with two students to put together a proposal and do some research on what other architectural schools are doing to support disability equity. So that is the current initiative that we're working on. I can say that on the whole at MIT, we do have resources available to all students at MIT who may have a disability. And I can put that resource in the chat too for you to take a look at. So we have like MIT institutional wide support. And then within our department, that's something that we're working on currently to improve upon.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Anything else from folks?
Well, hey, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi. So, I'm Minza. I'm an undergrad student and willing to pursue my graduate studies in MIT. I think, yeah.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, Minza, I can hear you now. Yep.
Yeah, I guess there was some disturbance from someone else. I actually put up a question in the chat and that got skipped, I guess. It was just a very small question about the EMP mentorship program that you talked about. So is there a limit of the number of sessions or queries that you can get with your mentor? I mean, everyone's busy in university. So, I mean, could you like elaborate a little more about that?
Of course. And I know that you and I have been in contact around your mentor. So if you're still having issues connecting with them,
I did connect with him once and
okay.
yeah. So I was just willing to ask about the follow-up and
Sure.
I mean, like, how often can I get to talk?
Yeah. So I think so since you were part of the first round, the first session that you had was in October. The second session that you can connect with your mentor is coming up in November next week. And then after that, there'll be a little bit of a break because our current students will be getting ready for finals and exams and the end of first semester. And then the third round will be in January during IAP month.
Okay, thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Yeah, of course. And then I think, after that, depending on your mentor, I think you can always ask them if they'd be willing to, volunteer the time to talk with you more. Some of our students are very happy to do that, and to take that extra time. So, feel free to ask them that. There's no harm in asking for a little bit of extra time, outside of those 3 sessions. Like I said, most of our students are just very happy to be a mentor and help as much as they can.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. And then, Brianna, I see you have a question in the chat. When we get connected to a mentor, should we have anything ready to show them? Great question. Not necessarily. I mean, this is very much personalized to you, so it's not necessary to have anything ready to show them. You can have I think I would say you can have questions ready, right? So questions about personal statements, which faculty to take a look at for profile, portfolio questions, what life is like here at MIT, but you don't need to have like your personal statement ready to show them. That's not necessary. Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Still have a couple more minutes, so if folks are still thinking of questions, what I'll do is that I'll put some links in the chat for you all. I'll put some links around NOMAS so that you know what NOMAS is. I'll put the link for the AMP program so that if folks still want to apply, that you can still do that. The application closes tomorrow, end of day. And then I'll also put down my contact information in case folks have any questions. But I do see one that says, can I ask that when will we be notified whether we're in the mentorship program or not? Yes, so applications will close at the end of day tomorrow. And then by either Friday, November 1st or Monday, November 4th, you will be notified about whether or not you'll be connected with a mentor. So we appreciate your patience. It's a bit of a process and we try our best to connect you with a mentor. So you should hear from us by Friday, November 1st or Monday, November 4th. No problem.
All right. We have a few of our students here, but not everyone is here yet. So do you guys want to start taking questions now?
Sure.
Good. Okay.
And Tessa, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording.
Yep. You want to go ahead and pause it?